Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Open Dialogue. As we continue with the show, we're going to be discussing more social issues. Today I've chosen another topic which actually has affected even me personally, which I don't really share normally. But I also have clients that have come to me, or just people in general, that actually have been affected by this topic. It might seem something which is, not really necessarily spoken about in a wider platform, because, we think that we can deal with these things between ourselves, and yes, we can. But when there is detrimental effects, when people are affected and there's an impact, when this sort of behavior is happening in our Muslim communities, then there is an issue and there is a problem, and that's something that we all have to be aware of. So today's topic is about the cattiness, appearance and judgment of others that takes part in our Muslim community today. I know this goes on for many generations between many individuals, as well as we have a responsibility, being seen as role models, especially when you are sitting and speaking on a platform, or even if it happens daily between individuals. There is still etiquette, there is still rulings, and there is still boundaries when addressing other people in a particular way. Yes, we are all open to criticism, but we have to deal with it and deliver it in a respectful way, even if we are trying to portray a religious sort of meaning behind it. This is a live show. I'm not going to be here to be biased, but balanced. If anyone wants to counter or challenge whatever this discussion is, that's not an issue, that's not a problem. We welcome that. Even if we agree or don't agree, this is an open show, open dialogue for everyone to share their insights. Today I have with me Syed Razavi. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining me again today. And we also have all the way from Birmingham who's travelled, Sister Zainab Amy. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate your time and the effort for coming here today.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
No problem. And we will start straight away with you. I mean, I've chosen the words quite carefully, because we know cattiness can be described in many forms, especially amongst, certain individuals and the female gender, which happens quite in a regular basis. And, we kind of sort of push it to one side a lot. But we don't realize that people are really affected by this, and people do turn out to some extent, to some extreme, even turning away from their religion, and people from religious, so-called religious policers that want to say what they want to say, but in a way that actually affects them and impacts the individual. So what can you start off saying about this topic?
It's a huge topic. I've been thinking a lot about this in the last few weeks, ever since we began the discussions for this show, because a lot of preparation goes into making these shows and having these discussions. The one thing I would say to people who don't feel like that this really applies to them, I think that if all of us took the time to sit and think about it, regardless of our status or our background, I think all of us, man or woman, at one point or another, has been on the receiving end of a fellow Muslim brother or sister who has been very harsh and very critical towards us. I think it's happened to everyone, even if it doesn't happen on a daily basis. And further to that as well, if you think about it, I think all of us can say it as well, that we know at least one person from the community who is religious, who loves Allah, who loves the Ahlebait alayhimussalam, but when it comes, if you were to ask them, hey, do you want to come to the masjid tonight and come and listen to this majalis, they will turn around and say, I'm sorry, I would love to go, but I don't feel comfortable being in this community with these people because of how they've treated me in the past. And that is so upsetting, that there are people out there that feel like they can't call the house of God a sanctuary.
We're not saying that people shouldn't be criticized, but there's a way in which there's constructive criticism, right? So I'm not saying that we shouldn't criticize. I'm not saying that especially people that are being criticized, there's different levels. Like you said, there is members that are representing our Muslims in the community that have a platform like you and me, for example, that speak. And there is some sort of expectation which has to be held to a particular state. So what do you think about that when someone is trying to call you out in a particular way because they feel that you stand up as a role model and you don't fit the bill?
It's absolutely fine to advise people. We have a tenet in our religion which is known as Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, which is enjoining good and forbidding evil. And the whole purpose of that doctrine is to create a moral and just society. So yes, whilst people should go, when they're on a platform, like when they're sitting in front of a camera or they're sitting on a minbar, and whether they like it or not, they're a role model. So they should take that seriously, you know, they should take that into consideration. But the thing is, when it comes to advising someone, when you see someone who's doing something wrong, you really do need to take a step back and think about how you're actually approaching this situation, because just because this person's in front of a camera or is on a minbar and has this status, at the end of the day, they're still a human being. They're still fallible. You only see 1% of that person's life. You don't know what they're going through. When you go up to them and you're calling them out for things, are you actually taking the time to actually speak to them and see how they're doing as a person before you're calling them out? And then when you do mention it, like, how are you speaking to them? Are you talking to them like they're your brother or sister, like we're supposed to be?
No, the words are said, but not necessarily treatment of it.
Exactly. They say it in a way to kind of soften the blow, but the words that come out afterwards, sometimes it's anything but softness. It's harshness. And the thing is, the whole point of Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, from my perspective, is it's there to encourage people to grow. Because it doesn't matter whatever age we get to, we're supposed to always be growing and developing as human beings. If you're speaking to someone in a way which is harsh, you're not encouraging that person to grow. But rather you're tearing them down. You are dragging down their self-esteem, their confidence, and that's detrimental to a person. In effect, what you're doing, if you approach this in the wrong way, you can turn someone off their religion.
Absolutely.
It's serious.
Absolutely. That's the reason why I addressed this issue, because people don't realize those words and that delivery, even if it's coming from a religious perspective, is not actually religious, and it's sort of you know, you can even defame someone's character by the way in which you do it. You can plant a seed into something. And the other thing is, a lot of these people that actually like to criticize, they like to do it on a platform behind the screen, for example. I've invited people on my show. I've invited people to even talk right now. Let's see who calls. The ones, especially the ones that criticize. Let them be on the same spotlight. If I have my shortcomings, you have yours, they'll have theirs. It may not be the same, but we all are open to it. So let's be on the same platform if we're also going to do this kind of stuff. And a lot of people just turn away. So, you know, at least make it an even playing field too. But again, you want to be behind the screen and you want to talk and chat, no problem. But it's really something that is also to consider.
Do you know what I saw on social media the other day, which you've just reminded me of? There was this quote that says that you never get criticised by someone that's doing more than you.
Of course, or on the same level as you anyway.
That's how it is.
Yeah, there is a psychology behind it. Syed, do you think as to what extent a person in our religion can sort of like call out somebody or criticise, and in what manner? Because there must be a ruling. Because, you know, we're not saying that we shouldn't be doing this, but it has to be done with consideration, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there is a verse of Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressing Prophet Muhammad himself and telling him that the reason people are around you is because you are lenient, you are kind. If you, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses Prophet Muhammad and says that if you were harsh and unkind to people, they wouldn't gather around you. So this is one of the first requirement for Amr bil Ma'ruf, that you have to be kind, you have to be lenient, you have to give benefit of doubt to other people, then you will be able to attract. And then this is how Prophet Muhammad, up to the age of 40, he attracted people towards him first, rather than Islam and Islamic teachings. He behaved like a Muslim, and once he established himself as a trustworthy, reliable, kind, helpful person, then people started to listen to him. They started to follow him. And I have quoted this many times. There is a saying of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in which he says that كُونُوا دُعَاةً لِلنَّاسِ بِغَيْرِ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ, that you should invite people not with your tongue, with your behavior.
With your behavior.
Your behavior, how you live with your neighbors, how you live with your colleagues, how you live with your own family members makes you, people would listen to you. If, for example, a husband is harsh to his wife and shouts at her, the last thing she would do is listen to him.
Even if he's right.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's not even about the
Or
message.
other way around.
Yeah.
If the wife is always nagging and criticizing and harsh and never appreciating, then of course you get ignored.
But what happens when someone, is saying, well, I'm trying to, give you rulings of religion, and I'm coming at you because it's a religious thing that I'm trying to portray, this is how it's meant to be. You don't really fit the bill. You don't really fit that characteristic. You're not actually, representing in the way that should be. And they're saying it in the tone that even I'm saying it, but I'm actually toning it down. And they do it in a way where they even want to go after you, attack you personally, go and even try and destroy you, defame your character, do it on a platform so everyone can even listen and hear, for example, these WhatsApp groups. They call Shia sisters or ladies or, Islamic sisters, whatever it may be, but then the behavior, the treatment, the language, the accusations, like you said, without knowing you, the attacks, the personal attacks.
Yeah.
How can one come across saying, well, I'm talking about religion here, and that doesn't apply because, you don't fit the bill? How do you advise someone like that?
Well, again, there are verses of Holy Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the ignorant people call you, you just say salam to them. But there are places where you have to be harsh. For example, there is a narration which says that being arrogant in front of an arrogant is worship of God. Because an arrogant person will not understand the language, any other language than arrogance. So there you have to show your arrogance.
Okay, so you kind of fight back in a way on their level. Okay,
But
or
you
remove
have
yourself.
But you should not use this
The same.
everywhere. If we look at the verse of the Holy Quran, there are two methods that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used in Quran. Giving good news, promising rewards, and in some cases he discusses about hell and punishment and what you are going to lose if you don't listen, what you are going to lose if you don't obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to be very careful.
The
it's
balance,
a very delicate line
It
where
is.
to change from leniency to
Of course.
harshness. For example, let's give the example of what America did by killing Qasim Soleimani. Required the similar language.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
If you didn't,
Yeah.
if Iran had not replied in the similar language, they would have been ruled by America.
Absolutely, but I do find, especially Amy, like we were talking about this earlier, that okay, if it's a strong-minded person who's dealing with this, they can fight back. Okay, but what about someone who's vulnerable and, like you said, they don't know? And I do find, and I'm saying this as a woman with experience for myself and people that have come to me with many complaints, that actually the women are the harshest to other women. Okay, and look at the examples that we have of women and how even today, in this day and age, we complain about the men being harsh on women. But when a woman is harsh on another woman, like what does that say? Especially a Muslim woman who's claiming to be followers of the Ahlebait, knowing the examples that we have, going to majalis, does, someone saying and claiming they're being religious but nasty to somebody when they go back home or sitting on their WhatsApp behind the screen, how does that make them in that way? Like, what happens? Why is it always the women? I'm generalizing, it's not always, but a lot of them, if they are, and this is a minority, again, it's always the minorities. I have had adverse effects where people do not think and feel like this, but the one or two that do, they plant the seed even in the minds of the ones that are not thinking that, because they're doing it on an open platform, not privately and speaking privately. Like, why is it that the women feel that they have that right to go against another woman when they should have more understanding. Especially we're trying to move forward. It's really difficult in a Western world, let alone in an Islamic world. And when someone's on a platform, you want to cut them off completely. How do you think that? Why do you think that happens?
It's a difficult question to answer, really. I think a lot of it does come from insecurity.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, when you think about it, when you feel happy and confident in yourself, you don't feel the need to go and drag other people down because you're too invested in your own energy.
Well, psychologists do say that, by the way, as well.
There you go. See, I know what I'm talking about. Yes, I think it is a lot of insecurity. It's such a shame, you know. I really do feel you with what you were just saying. It's not just the Western world that likes to attack women and kind of objectify them and diminish their worth. You know, it does happen in the Muslim community as well. Like,
which is against our teachings completely, by the way.
yeah, exactly. Islam is a religion that empowers women and allows them to go about their business, do what they got to do, and gives them those measures to protect them and to dignify them. And yeah, it's just so upsetting because like you said, there are some men out there that do oppress women, and you know they're the ones that turn around and say, oh, Islam is an oppressive religion. Well, yeah, you got that right, but you as a Muslim, you're not following the religion the way that you're supposed to be, in the way that you're treating your women. But you know, that's a side issue. And I think to add another point to this, not just the fact like we really do need to be implementing from a very young age with our kids, teaching them like self-esteem and self-confidence and things like that. I think another thing, from being on the sisters' side, this is just an observation that I've seen. I do think that when it comes to majalis and when it comes to programs, television programs and events that are catered towards women, I do feel that to a certain extent, I feel like we kind of obsess too much on the appearance of women. 100%. I feel like we spend so much time telling women this is the hijab that you should be wearing, which I'm not saying that effort shouldn't be put into that. Yeah. You know, don't misquote me on this. But it's almost as if like sometimes I've been to events and I've just thought to myself like, are you basically just telling us that as long as we look the part, that's okay? Yeah. They don't talk about our character, our knowledge, you know,
what's behind the face.
Our aims, our goals, that kind of thing. And I think if more attention, I direct this to any of the speakers and the Sayyids and the scholars that might be watching this. I think this is something that is really worth talking about. Firstly, like building self-confidence, especially in our women, but also like shaping our women so that like the outer appearance, the inner appearance matches the outer, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. I agree with that, 100%, because a lot of us may even look the part, so-called, and at the end of the day, the things that come out of the mouth does not match, even if you think you're saying something which is so-called religious. Like I said, I do call them religious polices, because all of a sudden, even someone has opening up of a spirituality, or they've become more you know, accustomed to, you know, performing a religious act, whichever way it may be. But you cannot impose what your journey is on somebody else. Everybody is from a different walk of life, different stage in the journey. We know what the highest level is. And the highest level is not just about appearance, and everyone's on their own journey. But if you were to look at yourself, again, we all have our shortcomings and we all can be criticized, put on a certain platform. I invite so many women on the show and most of them don't. Most of the time because they know how they're going to be judged, and it's such a shame.
It takes a lot of courage.
It takes a lot of courage. And then when you see one or two, you know, average, below average minds that will come down on another woman that's speaking, that's also representing them, to bring out more women to speak, and then they want to cut them short just from something that is so minuscule compared to the impact that individual might be bringing to other individuals. But obviously they're not even chatting to them, speaking to them on a one-to-one basis to understand them even further, so that they can have a clearer way. And yes, criticize constructively, give this kind of, you know, information and awareness, like like you said, which is inviting to help that person grow, but not to turn them away.
Yeah.
So that's something that I feel there is a lot of psychology behind people. They are affected themselves. That's why they try to impact somebody else in a negative way. And I do feel that if you are going to call out people in a particular way, it is not acceptable to be nasty. And no matter what you're saying, doesn't matter if you're quoting something from the Quran or hadith or a wayat, because it really does contradict the message. And that nastiness, and them, personally, I've known people that have gone behind to do certain things in order to even bring that person down from their maybe careers, or even defame their character by making assumptions that's false and accusations that are so detrimental. Like, I was even on social media today and I saw a sister saying to me, well, on her page, she was talking about being at a mosque, wearing hijab, helping as a volunteer, but she's a revert, not quite yet into Islam. And later on, a few weeks later, she was at a store buying groceries, and she met a lady saying, "You look familiar." And she's like, "Oh yeah, you know, I look different maybe because, you know, you saw me at the mosque." And then she kind of moved away because she saw her again without wearing the scarf, but immediately judged her. And then she put a note on Facebook saying, if that lady took time to listen to me, she would have realized I'm in the process of becoming a Muslim.
That's so
Okay?
sad.
And if I wasn't strong enough to become a Muslim, and looking at another Muslim judge me because she saw me once wearing the hijab in the mosque and then afterwards not wearing it, automatically there was a negative assumption. Now look how powerful that is when you judge and speak.
People like that should have to trade places with a revert and go and live in a revert's household and live with a family that doesn't accept the fact that their son or daughter has become a Muslim. They wouldn't last 24 hours.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And people are going through this day in and out. And even some other people, like, for example, reverts that have reached that level of spirituality, but then all of a sudden it gives them the right to go and judge somebody who's already on that beginning journey or not quite there. Again, it's just still not right. Nobody has a right to judge like that under any circumstance as far as I'm concerned, especially if you know that is going to have a detrimental impact. And I deal with people, especially in my profession, that have come out of these things which they want to turn away completely. It has had a mental effect on them in a negative way. So do not take it lightly. And calling each other sisters, would you really like your sister to be addressed in that way? Honestly, I think you'd think twice. And a lot of us don't think like that. And we have daughters. Would we like our daughters to be approached in that way? We don't know for sure if our family members, whether it's siblings or, you know, as parents, our daughters or whatever, is going to turn out to be as you think and say, and someone else is going to be judging them. Because it does come around. If it doesn't come and affect you, it will affect your family member. And then you'll understand. But why do we have to wait for that? Why? Why do we have to wait for these stories to come full circle for us to be, you know, Muslims understanding? Sorry, I have got my notes on my phone. That's why I'm looking. I'm not texting anyone else. And I do get messages from some viewers. And I do want to remind you, this is a call-in show, a live call-in. Give your comments and your questions, because this is for everybody. Like I said, if I'm wrong, if the sister Amy's, you know, saying anything that people do not agree with, or you want to add to the comments, please do. This is your chance, especially the ones that like to criticize. Here you go. There's an open line. You want to say what you said on WhatsApp or Facebook? Now you can say it openly. Don't go through even to somebody else. Say it yourself openly. I'm opening up the platform. I'm trying to be real here, because honestly, these things need to be out. Okay, you want to criticize? Let's do it fairly then, at least, so that you are also open to it. And let's see how it feels. Let's do it both ways. So inshallah, you know, we can hopefully, and also, as psychologists say, you know, I study human mind and behavior. I study neuroscience. I study, you know, psychology. But, you know, I can't remember everything. So, you know, we lash out at someone's looks. You know, going after someone's looks is a move from the lowest common denominator of fighting.
Allah.
Okay, so let's just give out some facts over there. If you want to go and address somebody's appearance next time as to what, you know, what sort of ego and level you're actually coming from. You know, we need to really talk about this, making facial judgments so readily. Why? Why are we doing this? At the end of the day, does your looks really reveal your character, your inside? Does it? Do you even give a person a chance? I mean, again, women go after other women. Is it such a thing where do you feel that it's lack of maybe empathy, decency in a person that can actually do this, Syed? You know, what comes from a mind of somebody who is so-called religious that can do this? I mean, how does that happen? It doesn't make sense to me. Treatment of somebody else is one of the highest levels, regardless of it. So how does this play? How do people get it so wrong, thinking that it's okay to do this?
Well, I mean, when Shaitan did not listen to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and did not obey him, he promised that he will deceive people. And the way when he deceives, he does not go after a already corrupt person. He goes after the so-called religious, pious, practicing
to test them.
Muslim. And this is the test that we felt. I mean, I might claim to be a very religious person, then suddenly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would put me in a situation that I would be tested.
Okay.
For example, there is a famous incident that somebody who used to come and stand in the first row of prayers every day. One day he arrived late and he ended up in the last row. So constant throughout the prayers, he said, when I finished my prayers, I realized that I was following the actions, but in my mind it was going on and on. What would people think? Why I'm not in the first row?
Okay.
So although he was a regular person,
that was more important.
That was his test to show that he was not doing what he was supposed to do. In the similar way, I mean, there might be very pious, practicing, good hijab lady, but she might be put suddenly in a test that she may fail and she would not be kind to someone else. So that's another way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests. And also Shaitan goes for the people like who are pious and religious, and when they are defeated, they celebrate the victory.
Okay. So Amy, what are the solutions then? Because again, I don't want to make judgment on if this is not everybody. I always raise topics which I know are the minimum, but these minimum can be a disease that can spread widely. Majority of women, they do empower, they do actually, the Muslim, the proper practicing ones that have a balanced life and a really strong mindset, as well as empathy, understanding. They can stop and pause and look at another point of view. But the few that don't have that, and they have bitterness, anger, jealousies, low self-esteem, whatever you may call these people that call out others in a nasty way and go beyond that. And what could they do to take steps to improve or, make adjustments that can correct it?
Okay, so I feel like if you have an individual who does have this kind of sickness in their heart, and I'm not saying sickness to kind of attack people, like it is just like when you have these kind of bitter feelings in you, it is like suffering from an illness.
That's true.
And the main thing to do with this, because it does come a lot from our self-esteem and how we see ourselves, you kind of have to go, as cheesy as this sounds, you have to take yourself on a self-love journey where you look at what your Creator said about you. Look at what he said about you in the Quran. Look at what he said about you through the hadiths from the Ahlebait alayhim as-salam. When you read a verse in the Quran, like from Surah Tin, where it says, we created mankind in the best of forms. And when you read something like that, that's to kind of make you ponder, like, wow, I spend so much time like hating myself, hating the shape of my nose or the colour of my eyes or like the size of my hips or whatever it is. But Allah, my Creator, is saying we've created human beings in the best of forms. He's created me the way that he wanted to create me. So pondering on things like that and really taking yourself on a self-love journey where you think about how you're speaking about yourself, what kind of thoughts you're having to yourself, how much negativity are you yourself putting onto yourself. I think once you take that step to really kind of acknowledge those positive and beautiful things in yourself, and and you have to do this consistently. It's not something you do it once and then it's sort of like, oh, I love myself, I'm completely comfortable in myself. You have to do it consecutively for day after day after day. And when you do that, when that sets into place, you will find that kind of like that need to kind of look at other people and see what other people are doing and talk about this person and talk about that person, because you're just so focused on your self-development, on your spiritual well-being. You're no longer going to care. That sickness, it's not going to hold you anymore, you know? You know, people talk about self-love all the time, and I used to be one of those people, like, when people used to say to me, like, because in the past I struggled with my confidence. People used to say to me, like, you need to love yourself more, and I'd just be like, oh, why do you say that to me?
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
Yeah.
And with regards to, when it comes to advising a person, I think even if you're not coming from a negative or nasty kind of place, even if you have someone in your life, or you see someone at the mosque and you're concerned about them, you see them doing something and you're just like, oh, they shouldn't really be doing that. Before you go over there, really stop and think. If this was me and someone was coming and talking and advising me, how would I want them to speak to me? Because Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, he said something very simple, but it's very profound. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Very simple, yep.
That's the first thing. The second thing as well is when you're going to go and advise someone, and I'm sure the Syed would back me up on this, like, do you actually know what you're talking about? I'm very blunt here.
Yeah.
Is the fact that you've heard about this in one majalis or read one book on this topic, does that make you qualified? Do you actually know what you're talking about here? Because advising someone when you don't have knowledge, that's a big no-no. You shouldn't do that.
What about someone that has the knowledge? Like I said, these religious, you know, so-called policers that say, well, this is the rule and you're not supposed to be doing this and this, that and the other. Then what do you do then? They have the knowledge.
I'm getting on to that. If you do have the knowledge, okay, and you go over to them, don't just go over to them.
This is what the surah says about this, that and the other.
Or even if you're going into the DMs on social media, don't just jump right in there. Go over there and be like, Assalamu alaikum. How are you? How are you doing?
And privately would be great.
Yeah, don't do it in front of the people. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam said that if you advise someone in public, you're basically humiliating them.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Don't do it in front of people, because just think about it. If that happened to you, how embarrassed would you feel? That's not a good place to be in, really, is it? So yeah, do it in private. That's a really good point. But yeah, just talk to them. Ask them how they're doing in their life. Because like I said before, you might see this person every day, but in reality, you only see 1% of their life. And on social media, you know, you don't even see 1%, because with social media, everyone posts the highlights of their life.
Which is literally a second.
We're not on there posting the days when we're crying our eyes out and we're feeling rubbish, are we? You know, we don't see
the whole picture.
Yeah, that's it. So we have to talk to them. That person might be going through a really rough time, and that could explain why, like, maybe they're doing this thing wrong. Okay, so you just chat to them, see how they're doing. And then when you bring it up, you know, ask them, like, do you know about the ruling about this? Because they might not know. You know, it just might be genuine ignorance. Then it wouldn't be their fault. And then when you do go on to talk about it, just do it in a way that encourages them, that uplifts them, that makes them want to go and do this thing. Don't say something. If you see a sister who's got a scarf like halfway down her head and she's showing her hair, don't say something like, "That's not." You might as well not wear it at all.
Yeah.
Would you say that to someone who misses Salat al-Fajr and prays the other 4 prayers? Would you say to that person, you might as well not pray? It makes no sense, does it? Does it really? think about how you're speaking to that person. Encourage them, uplift them, like remind them of the rewards and the help of Allah. And then it's up to them whether they want to take that advice or not. And then finally, the last thing I would say is just say to them, however they respond, just say, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
If you want to talk, if you want to hang out, if you need any help, I'm here for you. And just so you know, you're always in my du'as. That is a nice, classy way to help someone out.
Yeah, well, we know that even hurt people hurt people. That's why you were trying to say about self-love, you know, and bullies come from that. Attacks do come from people that are tormented and abused themselves, and they use it in the same way. They're not brought up right. They're not even, you know, in their households have those kind of talks. That's why they can do that easily to somebody else without that consideration. Religion is not just the rituals. It is not just salah. It is in between your salah. And, you know, talking about each other and to each other in a particular way, the treatment of each other is so vital. That is of the highest level. You also saying about speaking to somebody. Now, when you highlighted what you highlighted, I think that person, if they went through those stages, all of a sudden, they would not even feel about any sort of nastiness or harshness with somebody, because they're considering themselves, they're taking those steps. So it's really, really, you know, wise to sort of take steps instead of lashing out on somebody and having a go at somebody. And we know we do this even in our families to the children that are misbehaving, and we want to punish them and we want to, you know, reprimand them, and then we do it to other adults and individuals in the same way. Yet if someone was to do it to you or your children, you would not accept that. So how is that acceptable for anybody else?
That's a sign of having taqwa. We talk about taqwa all the time, like being conscious of Allah. Like going through those steps, that forces you to be mindful of Allah in what you're doing there.
No. I just think that our etiquette and manners should be above all, and we should be at the forefront of it. And especially when we're treating our, you know, fellow brothers and sisters. Okay, if we say those words as you're my sister and you're my brother, shouldn't we actually apply those rules in the way in which we actually, you know, address them firstly? It's just common sense to someone who has that intellect and wisdom, because religious people do have the highest sense of wisdom and intellect. Even if they're going to go forward and criticize, they're going to think twice. Well, if I'm criticizing somebody tomorrow about something, that's something else could be, you know, done to me and said to me in that way. Am I also willing to take that on? Am I also being willing to, you know, have someone, you know, say out loud, what is my shortcomings? And we all have shortcomings. Syed, before we end, I know we have certain expectations of people that are on platforms, and how could they still perform their jobs and do what they're doing, especially women, which are very rare, in a way that even if they're on their own journey, can perform in a religious way and be the role models without having to sort of like have people criticize them in that way. Like, is there a balance? Is there a fine line? I really don't know. Or do you think that people should be on the highest level before they even come on TV?
We need to educate the people. We need to educate them how to behave in society and how to address these issues. I personally have experience, especially in relation to converts and revert sisters. As soon as born Muslim find out that somebody has become Muslim, everybody becomes teacher for them. Even the least knowledgeable born Muslim person would pretend to become a teacher. I mean, I personally went for Hajj with some revert sisters and brothers, and the sister came to me. She said, I'm in a room with 3 other sisters, and everyone has become my teacher, and they want me to do this and this and this. I'm sick and tired. I'm getting already fed up. What should I do? I told her, don't listen to anyone. Just whatever I tell you, just follow it. So unfortunately, this is what happens, and there are brothers who also
Of course,
go through the same
absolutely,
problem.
absolutely.
They won't suddenly, if they see the revert or convert brother is doing wudu, everybody wants to become their teacher or criticize them. And especially if you are like the role you are playing, it's an important role in the society also. Instead of criticizing, they should be helping you and Sister Amy, who is also on TV shows and different programs. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
We learn. I'm not perfect as well. I mean, if there is any point, you should point out and tell me that I should do it better in future.
No, alhamdulillah. I mean, those are really good, vital points, but also it just becomes really detrimental, like I said, because then these become personal attacks. It starts off with a quote, and then it sort of spirals into being a personal attack, and that's where it's really not acceptable. And I just really hope that today's show has given some insights, given some knowledge to the lack of understanding people out there, and the less empathetic and less compassionate, because these words are important as well. If you had that in your heart, you would think twice when you open your mouth, especially if you're trying to say something in a negative way. Just remember, there is an impact and effect on that other person, and you are accountable for it, by the way. You are accountable for everything. We all are. If you are trying to say that somebody else is not performing in a religious way, the way you deliver that message has to also come from a particular way. So before we end the show, Sister Amy, what would you like to say?
I don't think I can really add anything else onto that, really. I think, people really do need to be mindful. Don't be the reason why someone wants to be further away from the community. Don't be the reason why someone wouldn't want to go to the majalis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Be the person who makes someone want to go to the majalis of Imam al-Hussein.
Thank you so much. Syed Razavi, thank you so much for your always insightful teachings and learning, and I'm always blessed to be sitting here and getting all this knowledge every week. And Sister Amy coming all the way from Birmingham for my show. I'm a great influencer, obviously, and I can definitely convince people in a positive way.
She can.
But inshallah, we just only want to highlight points here, not to even upset anyone that has done this, because again, we are all learning and growing. Islam is about becoming. We're never going to be on the level that we all assume that should be, as much as we all aspire to it. And we are all on different levels of growth and development. And there is a journey, and that experience needs to be taken into consideration about the individual that's going through it, whatever their circumstance. And just because you have got a platform or you are putting yourself out there, yes, you are open to criticism, but remember that whoever is deciding to open up about this and give some sort of consideration and information to somebody, there are steps to do it, and there are much, much more wiser, nicer ways of speaking, which I don't have to say. It's really basic stuff, to be honest. So if anyone is nasty, if anyone is doing anything, it really comes from a very bad, ugly space within yourself to begin with. So especially if adults are dealing like this shouldn't even be discussed on the show, but unfortunately it is, because of the amount of complaints, against my own experience about even everyone else around that has come to me with these issues. So it actually is something that needs to be taken into consideration. And inshallah, we will continue next week with another topic on Open Dialogue. Thank you so much for watching. I really encourage, inshallah, for more viewers to call in with your comments and questions. But this is your show, so you have the opportunity to speak as well. It's not just the comments that are happening on the set. So we will see you next week with another Open Dialogue. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.